Hey guys, Pete here. Everyone's had a chance to see all 4 parts of the new Twin Peaks The Return, Season 3, and this will be my recap and review for Part 4. It will contain spoilers for everything that has occurred in Twin Peaks Season 3 up to this point. I'm going to do it in the way that I did the first one for Part 1 and Part 2, so there will be a recap that goes through all the scenes, and then at the end we'll talk about what stands out as the most important pieces, what's going on, and all of that. So there will be a timestamp link in the description, so that if you don't want to go through the recap, you can just skip ahead to where we talk about what's kicking around in our heads after watching Part 4. Hello-oo-ooo. We pick back up with Agent Cooper in the Silver Mustang Ranch. Mr. Jackpots is still on a roll and even helps out the old woman by pointing her to the right machine. We see that the casino manager is worried that Coop will ruin him and that he has hit 30 mega jackpots. Of course, in real life this would never happen because the casino would stop things and investigate what was wrong with the machines. Not sure if that's important since we already have the floating symbol there above the machines that we know he's getting help from somewhere. But it's so much fun to hear him going, hello, that it doesn't really matter much to me at this part that, it's not really that believable that they would just let him win and pay him off. A new character named Bill Shaker approaches Coop and fills him in on some details about who he now is and where he lives. He's now officially Dougie Jones from Lancelot Court near Merlin's Market, so there's some King Arthur references all around him. My favorite part of this exchange is when Coop notices the hot dog and sort of smells at it. It shows just how strange all of this is to him right now, and that he only has a vague idea about what eating is. Dougie Coop tries to leave after Bill mentions there being cabs right outside, but the casino management stops him and takes him upstairs to receive his money. This scene is fantastically acted, and the gist is that the casino would be glad to help him with anything he needs. They don't seem to know who Dougie Jones is, and if you're unfamiliar with how casinos work, it might be confusing as to why they do that. Basically, the house has such an advantage in odds that since Dougie has taken so much of their money, they want to treat him well in hopes that he'll come back to lose that and more. They put him in a limo home, and the driver gets him there. Of course, he has no idea what he's supposed to do, so they stand outside for a while. We see Dougie Coop look up and notice that an owl flies by. Eventually, Dougie's wife, Janie E. Jones, comes out, slaps him, and explains not only has he been gone for 3 days and missed work, but that he also missed their son, Sonny Jim's birthday. She drags him into the house and starts to interrogate him. She realizes he has a large bag filled with cash, and he tells her he's Mr. Jackpots, which was hilarious, by the way. Once she realizes that he won the money, she says this is enough to pay them back, and her tone completely changes. She doesn't go as far as to tell us who they are who needs paid back, but she starts being nice to him and says she's going to fix him a sandwich and a piece of Sonny Jim's cake, and that she's so glad that he's made it home. We catch up with Golden Cole, who is meeting with Denise Bryson. Denise is now the chief of staff of the entire FBI and seems to have a connection or an interest of Tammy Preston, who she grills Cole about. If it's not a connection, it is at least that she's a little bit jealous of Tammy's beauty. This exchange between the two is short and sweet and basically amounts to Cole keeping Denise in the loop. There is a point when Gordon is waiting where he notices a bouquet of flowers in the seat next to him, and I'm not sure what the significance of that was. We go back to Twin Peaks and we catch up with Lucy on the phone about the thermostat and notice a really odd family portrait on her desk that looks like a photo of someone else with photos of the heads of her, Andy, and their son Wally sort of taped over top of them. We find out she was talking on the phone to the current Sheriff Truman when he walks in the front door. This surprises Lucy to the point of her passing out. Now, Lucy's always been quirky, but when we see her now, something seems off. It could be that her behavior has gotten more erratic, but it could also be hinting at something else. Either way, I'm going to be paying attention each time I see her because it seems like we might be missing something. Something inside her story that we haven't seen yet. After Sheriff Frank Truman leaves Lucy with Andy, we find out that there's a whole other modern control center in the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department these days. It's down the hall from where Lucy sits, and we find out a couple things in this scene. One, a boy OD'd at the local school, and two, the number of deputies and people working at the department has grown quite a bit. Outside in the hall, we find out that Bobby Briggs is now on the force. Sheriff Truman asks him if he knows the boy, Denny Craig, who OD'd, and says he thinks Chinese designer drugs might be involved again. We find out that Bobby has, been working. He does surveillance on the drug trafficking routes from Canada. Andy lovingly tries to explain cell phones to Lucy, and we catch a glimpse of just how awesome his hair is now. This is one of their best scenes together, and we see that Andy has real concern about why the cell phone thing keeps happening. The sheriff is talking to Hawk in the conference room, who is telling him what the log lady had told him and filling him in on what's going on. We get introduced to another new deputy here named Chet, who seems like a piece of work. He seems skeptical about what they're talking about, and he drops some funny lines in relation to Margaret Landerman. As he's walking out, he says he's going to go have a conversation with his pine cone, and Andy's reaction throughout this to he looks straight at Sheriff Truman right after everything Chet says. It's pretty hilarious too. Bobby walks into the conference room and breaks into an awkward bit of crying when he sees Laura's picture sitting on the table. When he finds out that everyone's gathered over something related to Agent Cooper, he mentions that Coop was the last person to see his father alive. Bobby's mom told him a couple days after, Major Briggs died, that Cooper had come by to see him and that Cooper had left town shortly after that. Bobby adds that Major Briggs died in a fire at his station the next day. This would be listening post alpha from the secret history that he's talking about here. So from this, we're to presume that after his lodge experience and return back to the Great Northern, as what we now see as Evil Coop, he went to see Major Briggs as a top priority. Also that Briggs supposedly died 25 years ago in a fire. Before we get into anything else, though, another new guy comes to the door and mentions that there is a Wally Brando outside. Andy and Lucy get excited and go out, and the deputy tells Sheriff Truman that Wally came to pay his respects, so he takes off to see him as well. Bobby starts to cry again as the sheriff's on his way out, and Hawk just sort of stands there and looks at him. The Wally scene is strange but fantastic. Wally's dressed like Marlon Brando, who we learned before they share a birthday. He shares a birthday with Marlon Brando, and he's dressed like how he would look in The Wild One. But he's talking like Vito Corleone, another Brando character in The Godfather. We learn Wally has been on the road and that he returned to pay his respects because he learned that his own godfather, Sheriff Harry Truman, was ill. He also wanted to let his parents know they could redo his room to make a study for themselves. As mentioned, this scene is odd but fantastic, and I'm not really sure, but this could also be hinting at something else. I mean, it could just be pure comedy, but there could be something else going on here as well. After that, we see Mike in the Red Room and Dougie Coop sitting in his bedroom, perplexed by these clothes that his wife has laid out for him. Mike is able to communicate with him, telling Agent Cooper he's been tricked. He then shows him the golden sphere or pearl that we saw come out of the real Dougie Jones whenever he was vaporized. And then he tells him something pretty important. He tells him that one of them must die. And he's obviously referring to one of the Coopers, Evil Coop or the real Agent Coop, who's now Dougie Coop. One of those two are going to have to die. They both can't exist in the world at the same time. We can't tell if Dougie Coop understands any of this, but we can see that he really needs to go to the bathroom. His wife comes in and he's sort of jumping up and down like a child who needs to go to the bathroom, and she points him in the right direction and he finally gets to go. It's a pretty funny scene, and on the way out he catches himself in the mirror and sort of stands there and looks at himself. After that, his wife gets him dressed, minus the tie, and we meet Sonny Jim for the first time, who Dougie Coop seems to like right away. Downstairs in the kitchen, Sonny Jim seems to be amused with Dougie Coop, but at the same time, he sort of helps him sit down and eat some food. So he's not like a total little bastard or anything, but he, at the same time, isn't all that surprised that Dougie Coop doesn't know how to do these basic things. Then we get one of the funniest scenes in an episode that's full of them when Janie E gives him his cup of coffee. He seems to have some memory of what it is, but takes a swig that he has to spit out, which I guess is because it's really hot or whatever. After that, he says, "Hi," whenever his wife yells at him, which, unless I'm wrong, it would be the first time he says something that isn't exactly what someone else, like where he's just repeating what someone else had just said to him. We get a quick update in South Dakota with the police investigation there. We find out the male body in Ruth Davenport's room's prints came up, but the identity was blocked by the military. Gordon, Albert, and Tammy also arrive in South Dakota. They arrive at the prison after we learn that Tammy gets carsick, and we find out the detectives are still analyzing the poison he vomited up. We assume that the poison is related to his garmonbozia. And we also learn that he had cocaine, a machine gun, and a dog's leg in his trunk. We talk to Evil Coop, who's in a separate room, and we notice that he's changed as well. So the real Coop is an invalid almost, and there's definitely something up with Evil Coop too. The way he talks is sort of like a robot, and it's just very unnatural compared to what we saw in the earlier scenes. He tells Gordon that he's been working with Agent Philip Jeffries for all these years undercover and says he needs to be debriefed by Cole. When the three go outside, Tammy points out all the obvious problems with Evil Coop and what he said and asks about Jeffries. Cole then scans her and says she's wearing a wire, which she points out he instructed her to do, and then he asks her to wait in the restaurant so that him and Albert can talk one-on-one. After she leaves, Cole turns up his hearing aids all the way, and they discuss what they just witnessed. This is probably my favorite overall scene in The Return so far. The look of it, the acting, the sound, and the whispering, it just had me on the edge of my seat, and I really felt connected to these characters. We also learned a few things, including that they agree something is definitely wrong, and that Albert had talked to and given information to Jeffries years ago. Albert tells Cole he authorized Philip to give info to Cooper, who he said was in trouble. He told him who their man was in Colombia, and a week later that man was killed. Gordon tells Albert he doesn't like what they saw with Cooper, that it might have been the accident but he didn't think so, and he says he doesn't think Coop greeted him properly. He then says he hates to admit it, but he doesn't understand the situation at all. When he asks Albert if he understands, Albert just answers blue rose, and Cole says it doesn't get any bluer. Gordon then says he wants one certain person to look at Coop, and Albert agrees. He asks if he knows where she is, and Albert responds he knows where she drinks. At that point, the episode basically ends with the normal ending, which is a cutscene to the Roadhouse with music. Alright, if you're a skipper and you skipped the recap, welcome to the video. So, a lot happened in this, and I said in my episode 3 recap that it was my least favorite episode, but I didn't really think about it as these being two parts that went together like part 1 and 2 did. In that way, it's still, I still think the opening scene there was a little bit too long, but I do like how these two episodes flow together. So this one was obviously a lot more entertaining, and there's merits to both. But I guess the big mystery is right there at the very end. Who is Gordon talking about whenever he says he wants to see one certain person and have them look at Cooper, who's before they make any decisions. Now the first name that comes to mind for me when I really think about this is Diane. Obviously, Cooper was keeping those tapes, talking to Diane all the time. She would be more familiar with him than just about anybody else. What Albert meant by where she drinks, I don't know. And I mean, of course, this could be anyone, but that's just who comes up to me. So let me know in the comments who you guys think it might be. I don't think that the Roadhouse scene has anything to do with that. I don't think that's an indication that that's where she drinks, but I could also be wrong there. I mean, it cuts to the Roadhouse each time, no matter what, so I just don't think that's a clue in and of itself. The Wally Brando stuff was hilarious, just acted great. It was bizarre. There is a theory going around that maybe, because of that photo that we see too, that maybe Wally actually died when he was young, and this is just a replacement that's trying to get Lucy, who's acting crazy, to, kind of move forward in her life. But there's really no other supporting evidence for that. It's just something to think about. Like I said, the Lucy stuff is weird, but I don't really know what's going on with it. It just seems like all of her scenes are odd, and that she really shouldn't be so quirky at this point. Evil Coop, do you guys have any theories as to why he's so much different when they see him in the thing? I mean, obviously he lost some Garmon Bozia whenever he was almost sucked back into the other side, but do you think that's what's causing that? Or do you think it's the fact that the real Coop's back out in the world again, and somehow they're both kind of affected by the other one? I mean, I think what's really exciting here is that Mike gave us that thing that we knew was coming, which is that the two Coopers are going to have to battle it out. But if we look at them right now, neither one of them's 100%, so I don't know how that's going to play out. But either way, Dougie Coop, or, the real Agent Coop, who everyone thinks is Dougie, is slowly but surely getting a little bit more adept, and it seems like, at least for the moment, doesn't pose an immediate threat to him since he's locked up. Now, he is locked up in the same jail, I think, as Ray. I don't know if that's been confirmed, but state prison, South Dakota. He may be there to try to get that information off of Ray. Although it doesn't seem, it doesn't seem like he planned to wreck the car, but who knows about that. Either way, he ended up there, and he should be able to get his information one way or the other. Gordon said he didn't think he greeted him correctly. You kind of caught that. He says really, really after Coop doesn't say really, really, and then Coop kind of says everything twice after that, which raised red flags for Gordon. Like I said, that was by far my favorite scene, I think. I mean, with him talking to Albert, I don't know why. It just was a really good and well put together scene, and I really enjoyed that. I don't know if it's nostalgia or whatever, but I really thought that was cool. And Tammy's turning out to be a pretty good character. She's a little bit on the outside still, but obviously love seeing Denise Bryson. It's interesting and funny to see her evolution as a character. The company did a good job there. I mean, she just is she's different, but the same, and, still not sure what's going on with Dougie, the original Dougie Jones. Bill Shaker seemed to know him, seemed to know where he lived. Doesn't mean much. I did make a whole Dougie video. I think you should check that out and listen to some of the questions I have about that and leave some comments, because I'm going to be doing a part 2 of that later this week. Another thing that pops up here from Bobby was that info about Major Briggs. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking that maybe the body in the bed. Myself, I thought about that myself, that body might have been Major Briggs' body with Ruth Davenport's head. What do you guys think about this idea that he died at Listening Post Alpha in a fire 25 years ago? I mean, the implication is obviously that Evil Coop was involved since he had talked to him. So does that mean that he actually killed him, like he set the fire, or he set the fire as a decoy, as, he abducted Major Briggs or something like that? So let me know what you guys think about that. So far, so good as far as I'm concerned. Everything seems to be going well. The story is developing. We're getting more pieces to the puzzle, and I'm still 100% digging Twin Peaks Season 3, The Return, to this point. So let me know what you guys think. Please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment with any questions or anything else that you're thinking about. I've been putting out a ton of Twin Peaks videos, so make sure you check those out. And I've got a couple lined up this week, so check back soon.